It's 4:20 somewhere, and right now that somewhere is right here. Hello, I'm Janae Burris.
And I'm Jake Brown. Welcome to the Cannabis Show, where we talk all things weed. Janae, how is your secret family in Boise?
They're waiting to see me again. I'll be right back this weekend. So.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just joking. You're really going back.
I'm really going back. You know, I got to go where the love is. Shoot, if they like me in Boise, then that's where I'll be.
Okay.
What's going on? How was Whitewater Rapid? You survived. You lived.
I didn't go.
I
I was saved by an act of God. There was a lot of lightning in that
Act of
forecast.
God.
And I was like, we're not doing this, are we?
Suddenly he's religious. That's cool.
It was a Saturday service. No.
Well, I'm glad you survived.
Yeah, I came home. I didn't do jack.
Maybe get in the bathtub, splash around a little bit, wildly.
I haven't unpacked my rubber duckies yet. We will find them. I'm excited. We're going to go to a party tonight.
Yeah, Cincy, let's do this.
And then some poker later.
Yeah, take my money.
All right, now it's time for the Week in Weed, and let's start like a bench press regimen or a meth addiction behind bars. While conservative scion Ann Coulter argued back in August that no one goes to prison for pot, the just released 2016 FBI crime data shows that 5% of all arrests are for marijuana possession, according to the Washington Post's Christopher Ingram. With more and more states embracing both medical and recreational marijuana, that hasn't changed the fact that more than 1 in 20 arrests involved a pot charge, and that someone is arrested every minute in this country for herb. Every minute. This comes on the heels of Attorney General Jeff Sessions doubling down on his previously anti-weed talking points in San Diego last week, saying, quote, "It doesn't strike me that the country would be better if it's being sold in every street corner," unquote. Sessions, of course, made it clear earlier this year he's a fan of mandatory minimum sentencing, so there's a potential for drug arrests to trend up faster than stocks for private prisons. Staying in Washington, let's go to Janae with the latest person to leave Trump, and no, it's not his third wife, Melania.
Acting DEA head Chuck Rosenberg, a holdover from the Obama administration, plans to step down from his post, which begs the question, is working for Obama and then working for Trump not already a step down? Jake?
A Texas man who smuggled 200 pounds of weed from Oregon will serve 3 years in prison, pay a $5,000 fine, and surrender his 1969 Piper Comanche and 2017 Lemon Haze.
Hey, fall is here, and that means everyone's favorite spectator sport is back as well. Are you ready for some chronic traumatic encephalopathy? I mean, are you ready? I practiced so hard on that. I mean, are you ready for some football?
Badminton? Oh,
yeah, great. Football's here. While current controversy surrounding the game has to do with whether or not players' First Amendment rights allow them to peacefully protest government-sanctioned murder of young black people at the hands of law enforcement, players' use of marijuana is a constant and complicated issue that deserves frank discussion.
Yes.
If we're going to pay these gladiators to bash their brains in for our entertainment, we should also grant them safe and effective relief from their pain. Take Kyle Turley, a former All-Pro lineman who played 8 years in the NFL and suffered more than 100 concussions. 2 years ago, the 41-year-old, who is also suffering with early onset Alzheimer's, turned away from opioids and began using marijuana. He told the Mercury News that medical marijuana is key to treating his laundry list of injuries, which include vertigo, depression, rage, and migraines. Despite an endless catalog of physical injuries and lingering psychological scars, Turley says he wouldn't hesitate to play football again if he could play while utilizing cannabis. Are you listening, NFL? You could get a few more years out of these guys if you granted them safe relief from their pain with marijuana. It's a win-win, maybe? We've got all your NFL MJ news right at thecannabis.co. Jake?
Janae, your home state of California has some serious problems on its hands, potentially devastating earthquakes, an unreliable water supply, a rapidly aging red hot chili pepper population.
You know what, Jake, forget you.
Actually, pesticides may be the biggest threat to legal cannabis, according to Lisa M. Krieger of the Mercury News. Experts are saying that only 15% of growers can produce the clean weed that the state will require starting in 2018, as massive outdoor crops have meant farmers taking shortcuts in the form of pesticides. Now, 2 cannabis testing labs in the Golden State found that 80% or more of samples they received were contaminated, leaving members of the community wondering what's going to happen to that weed that fails state-required assays. It's not hard to see how it could wind up on the black market or crossing state lines. And we'll be speaking with an organic farmer in a few minutes. Can't wait to get his take on this. Janae?
Just in time for Halloween, Colorado regulators have decided to ban edibles in shapes too tempting for curious children, like animals, fruits, cartoons, keys, TV remote controls, and Tide detergent pods with Febreze. The Cannabis Own award-winning staff reporter Alicia Wallace writes, the new rules are part of the ongoing evolution of Colorado's pioneering foray into legalizing and regulating the sale of marijuana. Soon after recreational use began here in Colorado, public health concerns emerged regarding accidental ingestion, overconsumption, pesticide residue, and the worst and most egregious offense, normalization. All this prompting state regulators to implement measures including child-proof packaging, to keep old people with poor dexterity out of your stash, and the barring of words such as candy to throw all those literate babies off the scent. Marijuana industry here in Colorado has been quick to comply with regulations surrounding edibles. Jake, remember our friend Josh Blue and the packaging used for his Blue Dream suckers? We could put Josh's terrifying pirate face on all edible packaging. What a great idea. But if you really want to keep these products out of the hands of children, consider bundling edibles like fresh vegetables and labeling them green stuff. Kids hate eating green stuff. Jake?
I hate eating green stuff. I'm working on it, though.
They're always like, I don't like the green stuff.
I'm working through my issues. It's crazy because you talk to edibles manufacturers and they're so frustrated because all of this costs a ton of money. When they had to do new packaging regulations, they have to start actually labeling edibles on the actual edible. Vince had a great video of this. A lot of them have to stamp THC on like a gummy, and it's not exactly easy.
Yeah, each piece of a chocolate bar has the leaf and THC, like each little piece of it. I mean, not once a kid gets that open, it's like kind of done from there anyway. So, I mean, I think the key is like just parental guidance. Parents have to do a better job, I think, of keeping those things.
It's like liquor,
Like
I always had a liquor cabinet. It was
like
locked
fire,
up.
like knives. Just really, keep track of them. And I did have to. I was reading about emergency rooms, and a lot of people ended up in emergency rooms for marijuana. And I had a good friend who does not normally partake, like at all.
So what? Just
I had to pick her
with
up
a whole bar.
Right. She just was being cute in front of a guy, and he gave her some, and she's trying to be cool. Trying to be cool. Keep it away from people who are trying to be cool. That's what it is. Those are the people messing up. But I had to pick her up from the emergency room. Like she called me, and she sounded so weird. I was like, oh no. Great. My friend, who was really smart and fun and great, is one of these dopes who ends up in the emergency
in the emergency room. What would they do for her?
Nothing. They basically told me, look, could you take your friend home and give her some water? Could you give your friend some water? She was embarrassed. She was like, I know, I feel better now, but at the time I panicked and went to the emergency room. But luckily they didn't charge her. They were just like, get out.
Yeah, they're probably just sick of this, right?
They're sick of it, basically. It's just people sitting around in the waiting room, sobering up, pretty much. But yeah, it's a problem for lame adults, I think. I don't know.
The only thing I like those stamps for is now people don't have to ask me if food I give them has weed in it. That's like anytime I make baked goods for people, they're like, is this? And I'm like, no, it doesn't have this stamp on it.
It's just delicious food.
It's just delicious
Texas.
food.
What
that
did your
I made
mom
with
make?
my Texas sheet cake, gooey
just
butter
Texas
cake.
Sheet cake.
Come to the Brown's house, leave 5 pounds heavier. For more on this and all the stories from the Weekend Weed, visit us online at thecannabis.co. Now we're going to throw to our latest installment of Strain, and if you're listening to the podcast, go over to YouTube, check it out. It's gorgeous stuff. Thanks so much, producer Vince. An excellent strain as always. Our first guest is the producer-director of a brand new pot doc. Please join me in welcoming Peter Spire to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Welcome to Denver.
I love being here.
How long have you been in town now?
Got in yesterday.
So it's been a whirlwind trip so far.
Sure.
You enjoyed the best that we have to offer in terms of just overcast and wintry here in the Mile High City. So you just did The Legend of 420, brand new doc that's coming out. But I wanted to ask you, it seems like your most recent work has been a lot narrower focused, whether you're talking about hip-hop or burlesque or lacrosse.
Yeah.
So what was the challenge in really approaching a subject with such a wide, such a broad topic like cannabis?
About a year ago, my CEO of our company at Accelerator Entertainment said, "Hey Pete, why don't you do this doc on cannabis?" And we felt like, there was a lot of interest right now.
Sure.
And I did a lot of reading on this stuff, but I felt like I wasn't the right guy, to tell you the truth. I mean, I love to smoke occasionally, but I'm not an expert. And you get these guys who know all the scientific, lingo and all this stuff. So I thought, well, but after reading about it and realizing the amount of government oppression against it, I thought, gosh, there should be something that people who are curious about it should be able to, check it out, enjoy, and see for themselves what's going on. I mean, even when it comes to, you saw the film.
Yeah, I got a screener, thanks.
Yeah. So, rather than, I mean, at the end of it, I thought it was so ridiculous that about this stuff that I had comedians respond to critics rather than having experts, because it's such nonsense, this criticism against this plant.
I thought that was really interesting too. You have, I want to say, like 4 or 5 comics, and it seems like they were all like given a comedy assignment, like, "Hey, this is what we want to talk about, and I want you to like do 5 minutes on it."
Yeah.
Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, we did. We did prep them, and
Did you guys create the comedy joint too?
We did.
I love it.
Yeah,
it was such a fun thing. But you've got people that are like smoking weed and on. It seemed like a very friendly crowd. We gave them, we're going to talk about this subject, or they had to do their own research and stuff. Sure.
So,
the worst part.
Yeah.
The homework.
But I mean, some of the the stance that some of these guys have are just so ridiculous. It's not based in fact. It's not based on science. So. To dignify it with another expert, I thought, we're gonna take this in a different direction.
Yeah, because I think that's interesting. Kind of the quote unquote villain of the doc is this guy Scott Chipman, and he's been an anti-cannabis activist for years.
Have you guys had him on?
No, I would love to have him on. But I mean, he says pretty provocative things. A couple different things. Marijuana is the same as heroin. He would be pro legalization if you took people's children away who chose to smoke and isolated them. Was the intention to have him kind of come off as this anti-cannabis caricature?
A little bit. I've been following him for a while now, and we see him on CNN, we see him on Fox News. He's a regular, and he really, when you look at who he is, he doesn't really have any credentials. He's a landscaper, and this guy is a voice for the cannabis movement. So I thought he made a great character.
Yeah, because when I watch issue docs like this, I think on one hand it's, there's no responsibility to present the other half of the story, but I also think that sometimes if you put up kind of a stronger villain or somebody that makes a little more, kind of more cogent points, really helps your people kind of just voice their opinion even louder. So this was a stylistic choice of, well, let's find the most ridiculous guy on their side and let's just have comics come back at it.
I mean, but these were the points that they're, I think these were mainstream points for these guys, I mean, in their opinion. So
See, I see him. We've had
Really?
some people
Yeah.
that have very different opinions than say I have on cannabis or
Yeah.
possibly even Janae, but I feel like there's more of kind of a moderate ground where people.
yeah, okay, yeah.
But so I just think he was compelling, and then you also have Butterfly Jones,
Yeah.
who is a guy who specializes in transport, coming down from Humboldt, pounds and pounds and pounds. What about his story did you find so compelling that you're like, because he's kind of a through, he's there from beginning to end. Is it?
Yeah, he's kind of he's somebody we come back to. He's a kind of a recurring motif. But I interviewed him, and I had actually romanticized what he was doing, and I decided, well, hey, look, what do you think about going on this trip with you? And it was, I mean, you get a taste of it in the film, but it was a hell ride. It was completely out of control. I kept waiting, and I had talked to my attorney before traveling with him because obviously we were doing something illegal. And I said, hey, I need a get out of jail card free. And he said, yeah, okay, well, look, don't pay for anything. You're a witness. You have a first right amendment to do this thing. Go ahead and do it. And, I was sure we were going to get pulled over at some point because about an hour into it, I realized he had complete road rage. He didn't have a driver's license, and he.
How does a man named Butterfly have road rage and no driver?
Yeah, well, but
Oh, man.
But
he's got the Humboldt sticker.
Right, exactly.
Well, yeah, he did a few things that to fly under the radar.
But once you're in that car, because you've got
the
the
dab.
tight shots of the dash where it's like showing. And
Yeah. But what about when it's dabbing? I mean,
Yeah.
and it's like the whole car it's like a Cheech and Chong movie.
Oh no, it was a ridiculously large dab.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about that because you have obviously Butterfly doing his big dab while at the wheel.
Yeah.
Operating
the hands
a
on the
torch
wheel.
and which I mean I know plenty of stoners that can operate a car without their hands on the wheel, but at a different point you talk about kind of the difference between drunk and drug drivers and kind of how you have an expert that talks about how it's a little bit safer to drive while high, and then you have a footage of a guy that's smoking a joint behind the wheel. Do you think that that it's safe to operate a vehicle while smoking weed?
Do I personally think so? I do absolutely. And the statistics prove it. Actually, here in Colorado, they have statistics that there have been less fatalities, and unless things have changed recently, but
there was actually a really good Denver Post story about
someone's not been reading the Post.
I think it's interesting, and I think it's one of those things that you get a lot of federal pushback too when you talk about the Cole memo, for example, and saying, hey, we're concerned about drug drivers on the road. I just thought it was interesting because I think that there aren't a lot of people that I meet in cannabis that are like, go and drive high. So
well, we're not recommending it. Okay. I mean, we are not recommending it at all.
In order to start your car, please insert joint and then key.
No, you do suffer from some issues, but I think generally you're much safer driving cars stoned than you are drunk. Any cop will tell you that.
Sure, I think that's a reasonable thing to say.
I think Butterfly's story was not that interesting to me just because he's exactly the guy that I'm like, that's not the cannabis image, please. I enjoyed hearing our friend Amy, the Potter Knowledge champion. I enjoyed hearing Amy's story and getting to see her family and how cannabis has helped their lives, like completely, not just her son's life, but the whole family's life. And I thought that was a really great story to focus in on there.
Yeah, well, and Butterfly, though, the poncho that he wear, I'm like, that was worth it alone.
Yeah.
And beyond kind of these two characters, you had a chance to interview a lot of different celebrities. I couldn't believe just Jason Mraz's veracity about cannabis.
He is totally into it. Yeah, it's amazing. He has a farm, which is turning into a grow farm, and
he's in.
Oh yeah, he's in big time.
Was there anybody outside of Jason that really surprised you during the course of the dive?
Well, Melissa Etheridge too. I thought, I know a little bit about her going through cancer, but she's also very, very, into this, and
yeah, she's about that lifestyle.
Oh yeah,
and I feel like she's been pretty.
And when you consider like the type of music and her background, it really, we wanted to find people who weren't the obvious choice.
Sure.
And she, she's a country music star, and just a little different different take on it.
Totally. I think one of the challenges with a project like yours is that there's so much that you want to capture kind of in the history of cannabis, but there's also so much happening in real time too. Was there anything where you were just like, oh, I wish we had a camera crew there when that happened, or something during the course of shooting where you're like, man, it would have felt like more of a complete documentary with that in there?
When you get into the editing room, you do have a lot of choices.
Sure.
So I think, there are things that we probably, would have liked to have included, but particularly I think if there's one, it's the glass blowers.
Oh yeah.
And that whole industry, and we have a few moments of glass blowing, but really that was one thing that I wanted to get. And our trouble was really finding the right guys and hooking up at the right time, but
Sure.
yeah.
When glass is almost its own currency, especially
Absolutely.
in California, you have so many people that have all of this cash floating around that can't necessarily put it in a bank. A lot of people now invest that money into glass as a way
incredible.
to kind of clean cash, which
Yeah.
is a whole fascinating subculture. I know that you've done a lot kind of in the hip hop and rap side, and there you have the four elements. You have MCing, DJing, breaking, graph. Would you consider there to be
I think there are a couple of unrecognized ones too.
Ooh.
Like, fashion. I think that's another one
Sure.
that hip hop has. I would definitely put that. Yeah.
Would you kind of have an idea after this of what you would consider kind of the elements of cannabis? Because I think of glass blowing as one of those obvious
Yeah,
ones.
definitely the arts. That are associated with it. I think fashion too. I mean, I think there's a fashion in cannabis. We highlight Dunkies, and Dylan's an unbelievable artist, and he's doing things I think that are outside the mainstream art world, but very, very important in the cannabis world. So, but the growers, obviously,
Sure.
that's a whole nother
Cultivation is
cultivation, and dispensaries selling it, and how these dispensaries are kind of finding themselves with government regulations and everything else. But you've got places like Harborside, which look like kind of
it's gorgeous.
it's gorgeous, but it feels like a Walmart. I mean, you go in there and everything is like in its place.
Someone's grandma greets you.
But and I love those guys. But
Sure.
then you've got the mom and pop places, which are very
And who knows
cool.
if they'll be around, come
yeah,
regulation
with
and all
California,
that.
it
It's
may-
changing real quick.
Sounds
out
like
there.
they're not going to be here much longer.
Yeah. One last question. What does it mean to be able to do the premiere here in Denver?
It means a lot, and I thank Millennium Grown and Amy so much for putting this together. We, as forward-thinking as California is, I really feel like this is the place. This is the ground zero for the cannabis industry, and it really, when you take a look at how forward-thinking you guys are, we're still trying to figure it out in California.
Yeah, I love at the start of The Legend of 420, one guy, you're asking everybody why they voted for it, and the one guy goes, I'm sick of Colorado being the coolest state in the nation. I'm like, yes, that's our title, baby.
Colorado loves stuff like that.
Yep. Well, thanks so much, Peter, and we'll have you back on in just a moment for Pot or Not, but it's time to bring out our second guest. He's a proponent of carbon-neutral cannabis in Oregon. Please join me in welcoming Jesse Peters to the show. Jesse! Hello.
Thanks, Janae.
Get in here. And
Don't
forget me.
So many
Not
guests.
having a party.
I'm trying to make my way down the line here.
I miss having two guests on this show.
Now it's a party.
Yeah, and you came in from Oregon, so you're up there, and you're doing carbon neutral? Are you almost there?
We're working towards carbon neutral. As I've said to many people, it's a statement that when it came out of my mouth was a lot loftier than I realized until we tried to actually achieve it. So our power is 100% carbon neutral, and
Congrats.
that we're 90% of the way there. It's the last 10% was where you really start getting into all the minutia of how do we get rid of our garbage can, and how do we get rid of fuel in the pressure washer, and all the little pieces. But we're getting there.
So when you say power, 100% there now, what are you using for power?
So we do carbon neutral credit through wind power.
Okay.
So we're actually a gold level member. Highest level membership is platinum. Platinum is New Seasons, Fred Meyer. They're large corporations in Oregon, and next year we'll be a
What do
platinum
they
level
do?
member. They buy all of their power, 100% carbon neutral power from wind farms that litter the Columbia River Gorge in Oregon.
Wow.
So the more we buy those credits, the more wind power can go up. The more wind power that goes up, the less we rely on carbon-based power.
See, I love that because here in Colorado, I think that there's a lot. The discussion isn't quite where it is when I visit Oregon and Washington about conservation, about sustainability, about kind of being able to work with a community as well. What has really led that? Is it just kind of the culture of Oregon, or is it more driven by the law and people really wanting to push this forward?
I would say it's the culture of Oregon. And the thing to remember in Oregon is there's a large diversity between outdoor farms and indoor farms.
Okay.
So the peak of the Mendocino Triangle, it pushes up into southern Oregon, and so you have all these outdoor farms, and they're sun grown. They don't use power, or at least they don't use power to flower their plants.
Sure.
And so there's always been a big kind of divide between indoor and outdoor. So in order to try to come on par with that, and honestly, just to be a good human, like
Be better humans, Colorado.
and for us, like it wasn't an astute observation on our part that I literally opened my power bill and it says, "Would you like to know more about green energy? Call this phone number."
Thank you. Check.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, earlier in the show we were talking about how California has kind of had this notorious testing problem for, I want to say, going back about 2 years in terms of pesticides coming up, people spraying Eagle 20 with kind of impunity. But you talk about, Southern Oregon having a lot of outdoor grows. Where's the disconnect there?
I will say to those in California, as we learned in Oregon, when your pesticide rules come online, you'd better be ready. I hear they're going to be more staunch than ours, and ours are the most strict in the country.
Sure.
And it's a learning curve for sure for a lot of growers. Fortunately for me, I was on the Rules Association Committee, and I was privy to everything that was looking like it was going to come down the pipe early, so we were able to really dig into our cultivation methodology and really look into beneficials and really look into the fact that there are pesticides that are OMRI listed and organic that are still not allowed.
Sure.
And so that was where a lot of outdoor farmers made mistakes, is I just went down the organic trail and it didn't work out, and there were a lot of fails in the first round of outdoor harvest.
Well, and you're involved in a few different organizations now. When we're talking about farmers that are in California that maybe haven't been as involved with regulations and with the rulemaking process, how did you make that transition?
Difficultly.
What's that?
Difficultly. We made the transition on several levels. For one, when we had a medical system come online, you really do have to start looking at the integrity of your company. What are we giving people? What really is in the cannabis? Where are the studies that show you what spinosad or any other number of chemicals or organic products that you can put on the plant? What does that do to people when they smoke it, when you heat it up? Because you can put fluoramide on tomatoes up until 4 days before you sell them to the store and eat them.
Right.
Consider that when you buy a tomato.
Or what's the
just ruined
myclobutanil? Is that
Mycobutanol.
where they're saying that might have some kind of residual effects in people that are long-term smokers? There's actually, I want to say it was a paper up in the Pacific Northwest that just did a new study about heating hash oil too hot and different chemicals that are released. So I imagine though that for some people they're just like, listen, I just want to run my farm. I don't want to have to deal with that stuff. How do they get involved? What are the resources, or how did you make that transition?
For me, honestly, I was one of the founding members of the Oregon Cannabis Association. We're 300 members strong now. Pick up the phone, join an association,
Join
team
a trade
together.
group, things like that.
Yeah, talk to your fellow farmer. I mean, the reality of it is there's a lot of competition right now. It's not the real competition. The real competition's coming. When the federal walls come down, the real competition comes. So bond together and make yourselves stronger. we're open source code. What do you want to know? How do you want to know how to do it better? There are a million things we can do better. I pick up the phone and call all the other growers I know and say, how do you do this? And they tell you, usually. And if they don't, then that's fine. You guys have your group, we have ours.
And I think that that's at odds with what a lot of people have thought for so many years, especially in a market like California, which looks to be hyper competitive, where it looks like everyone's going to kind of be at each other's throats when this licensing program opens up. Or, as we were just talking about with Peter, that a lot of these mom and pops think that they're just going to get licensed right out too. So, how do you speak to those people that go, hey, this is going to be hyper competitive and any advantage I have to take?
Get involved in the rulemaking process. Know who your legislators are, know who your representatives are, know who's going to make the rules, and get involved. Be well educated, be well spoken. We've all been there to hear about the history of the cannabis plant and what it can do for for society as a whole. But we're talking about rules and regulations right now with people who are paid with tax dollars. So sit down, be prepared, be serious, and give the appropriate answers to those who are asking the questions so that you can protect not only yourself, but the other mom and pop and small companies around you to get a chance to flourish.
Yeah, I think that people don't. People have the temptation is always to be very protectionist in rulemaking and act in your own self-interest. So that's really interesting. So you're a 21-year Marine Corps vet. You reached the rank of gunnery sergeant, is that correct? Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I think that we're having a lot of interesting conversations right now about what patriotism means in the country. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say, if you would like to, anything about the recent protests.
That's a good question. Yeah,
and you can speak for yourself. You don't have to speak on behalf of any organization or company. I'm just interested to hear your thoughts.
for me personally, I've always been a fan of the fact that the military is paid to defend democracy, not practice it. You have the right to do whatever you want on this planet, and it's my job to protect that.
Well said.
Or was, at least.
Yeah. Colorado just recently managed to add PTSD to our approved medical conditions list. What are still some of the issues that vets face, and where does marijuana or medical marijuana intersect with those?
Access.
Access?
Access. The VA and access. There are, the popular statistic is 22 a day. Veterans that we lose, we're losing
22
more.
push-up challenge that,
Yeah. So we lose more every day than we lost in combat. You're looking at large-scale drug addiction to opioids and large-scale, for what I like to call pill pushing. Pfizer's got a lot of money, and until we break down those federal walls, we're having issues. But state by state, if we can start getting access to veterans, start waking people up to what they actually need or want, and more to the point, if it's what you want, you earn that right.
Well, thank you for those well-spoken points. Now let's play my dumb game called Pot or Not.
The show got serious.
Do we get to do this together?
Yeah, oh no, so you'll be competing against each other.
Oh,
that'll
no.
be fun too.
Well, you're not going to beat Amy's score, so you can get that out of your mind right now.
So the way this works, I'm going to give you a strain or a just thing that sounds like it's a type of weed. Tell me if it's pot
And
or
I'll ring the
not.
bell for you guys.
Good luck to you.
You can go first.
Someone throw a Sharpie at my head, please. Because I have no way to keep score. All right. So I'm going to ask you guys to try and answer at the same time, if you don't mind. All right. Are you guys ready for pot or not?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right. Let's do it. That's terrible. Number one, Virgil Green. Is it pot or is it not?
Not.
That is not. No. Congratulations. Both get
I
a
don't know where to
point.
ring this bell now. I should try to keep score. Next time I'll keep score for you.
Virgil Green, tight end for the Denver Broncos. I thought I might get you on local sports, but you guys are on it. Number two, Cilantro Haze.
Not.
Yes.
It is not. That was actually Janae's.
What are you talking about? I'm growing that in my backyard right now. Come on.
All right, I'll smoke some, even though I hate the taste of cilantro. All right, 2 points to one. Number three, God's Gift.
Pot.
God.
That is pots.
that is
Correct.
Or the spell on those guys.
GDP and OG Kush. Number four, Tahoe OG Kush.
Pot.
Pot.
You said it so confidently. You just Peter like, sure.
Where am I
man.
going to go? Where am I going to go?
And that is correct. All right, you're going down the list. Number five, Rain Dance.
Pot.
Not.
It is pot.
Wow! Well played.
Green
Hey,
point
we're right.
seeds.
Yeah.
And we tied the game up with 4 points apiece. Number 6, gelato.
But
Pot.
That is correct.
you want to see a picture of it in our room?
Yeah, you got some?
Yeah, on our cameras.
Yeah, it's like one of the. It's the biggest. It's Sunset Sherbet and what's the second straight on that? All right, total
Aren't we
brain
finished?
fart. No, you got 4 more to go. But you're all tied up 5 points apiece. Let's go to number 7,
Oh,
the
right.
Greenway.
I'll say pot.
I'll say not.
It is not pot.
right.
It's a Denver Trail
Greenway?
that runs through.
I'd have to breed one of
Runs
those.
through the city, and there's a lot of interesting folks hanging around doing all kinds of fun needle drugs. All right, so we got 6 to 5. You got a chance to make it up right here with number 8, Black Roses.
Not.
I'm going with not as well.
That is pot. No bell. Headband crossed with Early Girl. It's a new one. All right.
Headband. Pot.
Half a point.
Okay.
Half a point.
Number 9, Pompous Zombie.
Not.
Pot.
That is not pot.
No, he's running away with this thing now.
Pulling ahead with 7, but we'll do bonus points. Number 10, Flame the Rock Cronson.
Not.
Flame the Rock Cronson.
I'm not as well.
That is not pot, and we have our winner. Congratulations, Jesse, with 8 points. You're going to take it. Valiant effort with 6, though, Pete. And congratulations to @Dave Lasso for that last suggestion. You're going to win a collectible card game called Chronic Wars or something. I don't know. Somebody gave it to me, but we'll send it to you.
How you want him, Dave?
All right, guys. Where can people find you online and get more information about what you got going on?
For us, EcoFirmaFarms.com, EcoFirma on Twitter, EcoFirma Farms on Facebook,
Yeah, don't get that Facebook page shut down.
EcoFirma Farms on Instagram.
Awesome.
Very cool. And for me, right now we're on iTunes and Amazon starting October 3rd. I
Cool.
believe. Yeah.
Oh, so we would just go do it just like they would get an album and.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
We got
pretty
the big premiere on
On the 30th. We
the
have,
30th on Saturday.
Where's that at? Denver. No,
Denver. No,
what's
but
the
where,
venue?
where?
Okay, are
We're here.
tickets still available? No. Oh, it's sold out.
Okay, so none of your business
Yeah.
where it is. Me and Jake will be there dressed real fancy, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a suit.
Big boy.
Janae, where can people find? What do you got going on?
Hey there. Sunday, October 1st, I'll be downtown at Comedy Works, and Tuesday, October 3rd, at the South Club, Comedy Works South Club, for a showcase we're doing with all our almost famous comics, a bunch of my favorite people. Message me for special ticket deals, wink. Wednesday, October 4th, since I am out of the contest, I will be headlining Uncorked at Infinite Monkey Theorem. I'm working on a website, guys, promise, and I'll have all of my dates there. Tweet me at Negative Negro until then.
And tweet me at Fake Jake Brown or at Fake Jake Brown on Instagram or just Jake Brown on Facebook because they won't let me be fake there. Thanks again to Peter Spire and Jesse Peters for joining us today. Thank you for tuning in at home. Send us your pot or not suggestions on the Twitter and the Facebook, the hashtag pot or not. And recent winners, producer Vince was on vacation, but he is going to be back, or he is already back, so your prizes are coming soon. All that's going to happen, I promise. For producer Vince, Janae, Burris, the whole Cannabis Show crew, I'm Jake Brown, and we'll see you next week. Yeah.
I'm gonna win any pots and you'll be raising at the end. I'll say it again. Ain't afraid to get in. I'll be going for the jackpot with ace in my hand. I'm raw.